All right, we're back with our second half of the analysis of a tax, but most of it is done. I mean, if you can see that this total revenue to the business person is on the bottom, and you add the $5 tax, that's the total amount the consumer is going to have to pay as the tax and the amount that goes to the business, and the consumer surplus on top, then it's pretty straightforward to see that between the $5 the business person gets to keep and the variable cost, that's going to be the producer surplus part of the total revenue. So let's just draw it up here, and I don't know, color it green. And so that green is the producer surplus, 1/2 times 3 times 3. That's going to be 450 for the producer surplus. So let's type that here. Producer surplus equals 450. And the variable costs will be the bottom part. $15 is the total rectangle for total revenue, minus 450. The variable costs are going to be 1150. So variable cost equals 1150. So the only thing left now is to figure out how much is the deadweight loss going to be. Now, just like when we were doing the production quota and the price ceiling, the deadweight loss is the amount of surplus that there was before compared to how much surplus there is now, but with one small difference. Now, if you were looking at this little triangle over here and you said, I bet that's the deadweight loss, I'd bet you're right. So let's just draw that in there. Let's see, right there to there to there and back again. And let's color that some ugly kind of brownish color here so we know that that's bad deadweight loss. Then that is the deadweight loss right there. But you can't just compare, which is what I really like to do, for a production quota or for a price ceiling. You can't just say that the total surplus before the tax was 30 in this case, in the last couple of examples, and that now the consumer surplus is 3 and the producer surplus is 750. Well, yes, you are exactly right that now the total surplus is equal to 750. Not all of the decrease from the $30 in total surplus down to the total surplus we see now, 750, not all of that 2250 is deadweight loss, because for whatever reason we don't consider the tax revenue that goes to the government deadweight loss. Why? Well, we kind of consider that this $15 in tax is surplus that goes to the government. It's a good thing for the government. And you know what? The government might actually spend that money on something that's good for the producers or the consumers. So we don't consider it deadweight loss. Instead, we consider it another good thing that happens from the transaction, good for somebody at least. So to calculate the deadweight loss, there are two options, and let's do it both ways. First, if we take the tax revenue, let me add that as one of the things we want to calculate. Tax revenue equals the $15. If we add the tax revenue plus the total surplus the consumer and the producer gets, then we get a total of total surplus plus tax equals 2250. Now, if we compare that to the $30 in total surplus that we have without a tax and without a price ceiling and without a production quota, you can see that that is where the deadweight loss will come from. $30 without any interference minus 2250. The deadweight loss is equal to 750. So that should be the area of that triangle there. Now, if let's see if I can actually do this. Let me make a copy and then paste it. Okay, paste it up there. That is exactly the same as this deadweight loss triangle. We could calculate just the area of that triangle. Now, how would we do that? Well, let's consider this left edge the base of the triangle, and then from the base up to the top, the height. Then what would we end up with? Well, this base, if we could turn the page, it would be the distance between 10, the price that the consumer pays, minus the price the producer gets. You can see that that base is the $5 tax, really. So the base is 5. The height is on the quantity axis down here. The height goes from a quantity of 3 up to 4, 5, 6. It goes from a quantity of 3 to 6. So the height there, 1, 2, 3, in order to calculate the deadweight loss, it should be the same as 1/2 times 5 times 3. 3 times 5 is 15. And so the deadweight loss, 1/2 times 15, 750. It's good to be able to look at it and verify it in a couple of different ways. Okay, now what would happen if instead of the tax being something the consumer pays, what if it was a tax that the business had to pay? Well, it doesn't matter. And let me quickly try to convince you why it doesn't matter. We saw that when the tax is on the consumer, what it does is takes the demand curve and shifts it downward by $5. If the tax is on a producer, remember the supply curve is the same as marginal cost. Marginal cost is how much additional cost the business has to produce each unit. And usually it's just labor and materials, but if you also add a tax as a cost, what's that going to do to that supply curve or marginal cost? It's going to shift it up by exactly $5. So let me do that here. So I just grab the supply curve, and instead of a y-intercept of 2, now the y-intercept would be 7. What is going to happen in that case? Well, the price that the business charges is going to go from $5 up to $10 here. And the amount that the consumer is going to have to pay is that $10 price. But then the business is going to have to pay 5 times 3, $5 times 3 units they sell, $15 in tax to the government. And then the business will be left over with $15 in revenue after it pays the tax to the government, at which point it is going to have $11.50 in variable costs. It will have $4.50 in producer surplus. The consumer will have $3 in consumer surplus, and the deadweight loss will be $7.50. So this is what we call the kind of the irrelevance of who pays the tax. Is it a consumer or a producer? It doesn't matter. The outcome is going to be the same. The tax. Let's talk about the tax incidence, because we haven't talked about that yet. Tax incidence is going from the equilibrium price of 8. If we put a $5 tax, who pays and how much? Well, what I like to do to visualize this is put a line right at the old equilibrium price, right there. And let me color that some bright red here. Let's see. Okay, bright red. Now we can see the old price was 8. Of that $5 tax, how much does the price the consumer pay go up from 8? Well, it goes from 8 up to $10. So in this way, we would say that the consumers are affected $2. Their price goes from 8 to 10. So the consumers paid $2 of the tax. The producers used to receive $8 for their product when they sold it, But now how much do they really get to keep? They get to keep 5. So the producer's price they get goes down by 3. So the incidence is, how do we split this 5? The price for the consumers goes up 2. For the producers it goes down 3. And so we would say that the producers pay $3 of the tax and the consumers pay $2 of the tax. Now, why do the consumers pay less? It's because their slope is lower than the producer. Whoever's slope is flatter will end up paying less of the tax. And it's related to elasticity. The flatter the slope, the more elastic you are. In this case, the consumers are more elastic, and so they're going to pay only $2 of the tax. The businesses pay 3.